Have you ever had the feeling that something larger than you is trying to guide you, but you keep missing the signs? Maybe it's a repeated number, a strange coincidence, or a gut feeling you ignored only to regret it later. We live in a world obsessed with control, precision, and results, so when someone says, "Just trust the universe," it often sounds like nonsense, like a spiritual shortcut, a naive escape from responsibility. But what if it's not? What if, beneath that overused phrase, there's a powerful, ancient truth we've forgotten? A truth that could change how you see every decision, every setback, every moment of your life. We're taught from a young age that success means taking control, planning every detail, pushing through, forcing outcomes. Every book, every mentor, every system tells us make it happen. And yet, even with all the planning, life still throws us into chaos. Relationships end unexpectedly. That job you thought was a sure thing disappears. The opportunity you chased turns out empty. And you're left wondering why. The idea of trusting something beyond your logic sounds laughable in those moments. But here's where it gets interesting. What if trying to control everything is exactly what's keeping you from the outcome you want? Because despite our best efforts, life often doesn't follow our script. No matter how much we strategize, we can't control the timing of a breakthrough, the emotion of another person, or even our own intuition. And when we ignore those moments when life is gently nudging us in a new direction, those intuitive whispers, those recurring symbols, we stay stuck. Trust the universe is not about giving up. It's about giving space. It's not about doing nothing. It's about knowing when to stop resisting, and this is not a modern idea. Ancient cultures spoke of this, of flow, rhythm, and divine timing as the true language of life. Think about it, nature doesn't force. The ocean doesn't argue with the shore. The seasons don't apologize for changing. The river flows not because it tries, but because it allows. What if our lives are meant to function the same way? What if the chaos we feel is not because life is random, but because we're swimming against the current? The concept of surrender, of trust, is not weakness. It's a different kind of strength. A strength that knows when to move and when to listen. A strength that understands that not everything can be controlled, but everything can be responded to. So we return to the phrase, trust the universe. Still sounds crazy, maybe. But what if that craziness is exactly what you need to break free? What if that phrase isn't about being passive, but about becoming aligned? You don't have to abandon action, you just have to stop assuming that force is the only way. Because once you start listening, really listening, you'll notice something strange, patterns, symbols, serendipities, as if life has been speaking a language you were never taught. But the moment you begin to trust even a little, that language begins to make sense. And here's the question that opens the door to everything that follows. What if letting go of control actually made you more powerful? What if everything you've been taught about control is backward? We're told from childhood that control equals strength, that to succeed, we must plan, dominate, and push forward at all costs. That letting go is failure. But reality, especially spiritual reality, has other plans. Because some of the most powerful transformations in human history happened not through force, but through surrender. Not in moments of control, but in moments of release. This isn't philosophy, it's pattern. And maybe it's time we stopped resisting the truth it's been trying to show us. Let's start with something personal. Think back to a moment in your life when you were trying to force something to happen. A job, a relationship, a goal. The more you tried, the more the door stayed shut. Then, maybe at your limit, you let go. Not because you gave up, but because you had to. And suddenly, almost inexplicably, something shifted. A new path opened. The call came. The answer arrived. That's not coincidence. That's flow. And this is the paradox. When you finally stop clenching your fists, the universe has room to place something in your hands. Throughout history, some of the greatest breakthroughs didn't happen in moments of control, but in surrender. Einstein had his theory of relativity while daydreaming. Spiritual leaders across all traditions describe deep insights arriving not when they were striving, but when they were still. Steve Jobs trusted intuition. Athletes enter flow by letting go of tension. Musicians stop thinking and the music appears. This isn't about laziness, it's about alignment. Letting go isn't the end of effort, it's the refinement of effort. It's choosing when to act and when to step back and listen. And here's where the real power emerges. When you let go of how things should happen, you create space to reconnect with why they matter in the first place. You begin to move with intention, not control. With trust, not fear. You act, but without desperation. You create, but without attachment. This is where intuition sharpens, where timing improves, where synchronicity becomes frequent, almost eerie. Because when you step back just enough, life steps forward. It's as if something larger has been waiting for you to loosen your grip so it can finally collaborate with you. So ask yourself, what would it look like to stop forcing and start flowing? What kind of results could emerge if your actions were guided not just by logic, but by alignment? You don't need to abandon your goals, but you may need to surrender your grip on the outcome. Because the most powerful people in the world aren't the ones trying to control everything, they're the ones who know when to let go. And if letting go has the power to transform a single life, what happens when that principle is applied to entire communities or even systems? That's the next revelation. But for now, pause and ask yourself, where in your life are you holding too tightly to something the universe is asking you to release? Imagine for a moment that surrender isn't just personal. What if it could be collective? What if the principle of letting go wasn't only about individuals finding peace, but about entire groups, communities, and systems discovering a higher intelligence through trust? This idea might sound poetic, even utopian, but look closer, and you'll find it already exists quietly, powerfully embedded in nature, in moments of synergy, and in the few human systems that dare to prioritize cooperation over control. Let's start with nature. A murmuration of starlings, thousands of birds dancing in perfect synchrony, has no leader. No single bird commands the movement. Yet the formation flows, adapts, and survives with breathtaking precision. How? Because each bird tunes into the rhythm of those around it. It listens, responds, and moves as part of a greater pattern. This is collective surrender in action. It's not chaos, it's intelligence. And it shows us something profound, that releasing control at the individual level can lead to a much higher order at the collective level. The same principle shows up in human history. The most resilient movements, the most groundbreaking ideas, and the most transformative social shifts didn't come from one person at the top pulling all the strings. They came from moments of shared alignment when groups surrendered ego, hierarchy, or rigid plans to something emergent. Think of jazz ensembles improvising together. Think of council circles in indigenous traditions. Think of creative teams who enter flow not because of rules, but because of shared trust. These are examples of surrender scaling, of cooperation becoming intelligence. And here's the key. This kind of collective surrender isn't passive. It's not about everyone doing nothing. It's about everyone doing what they're meant to do together without the need to dominate or control. In a world addicted to top-down systems and micromanagement, this idea is radical, but it may also be essential. Because systems based on control eventually become brittle. They collapse under pressure. But systems based on trust, they bend, adapt, and evolve. Collective surrender isn't weakness. It's a survival mechanism for the future. So ask yourself, Where have you seen this happen in your own life? In a team, a family, a project, a moment of crisis when things clicked not because of control, but because of shared flow. These moments often feel magical, but they're not magic. They're alignment. And if individuals can experience the power of surrender, and groups can amplify that power through synergy, then what happens when we scale that idea to entire societies, to governments, to the way we live together as humans? That's not just a question, it's an invitation. Because what if collective surrender isn't just a spiritual idea, but a blueprint for evolution? Let's pause the philosophy for a moment and just observe reality. Not human reality, but natural reality. Your body heals itself without your conscious permission. Trees grow toward the sun without being told to. Waves follow the pull of the moon without resistance. Nothing in nature fights to exist, it just flows. And yet, it works. It adapts. It thrives. So ask yourself, is that just coincidence? Or is there a deeper intelligence built into life itself, one that doesn't dominate, but guides, one that doesn't command, but collaborates? And if so, is that same intelligence trying to guide you? We often assume we're alone in our struggles, that it's all up to us, that we have to figure it out, force it, push until something happens. But what if we're not alone in that way? What if we're moving through a universe that is already wired to support us, but we're too busy controlling to notice it? This doesn't mean the universe grants every wish like a cosmic vending machine. It means it responds to alignment. It meets you halfway. It works with you when you stop resisting how it moves. Modern science is starting to touch what ancient wisdom has whispered for centuries. Quantum fields, biological rhythms, neural networks. Everything is connected. Everything responds. Systems thrive not through domination, but through cooperation. And your life is no different. When you resist change, push against timing, or ignore your intuition, you disrupt a pattern that's trying to carry you. But when you pause, observe, and trust, you begin to move in harmony with something larger. And that's when things start to happen. You notice the call, the meeting, the insight, the rest exactly when you need it. This isn't mysticism, it's participation. The universe isn't random, it's responsive. But it doesn't speak in ultimatums, it speaks in nudges, patterns, energy. And when you're too busy forcing, you can't feel it. But the moment you relax your grip mentally, emotionally, spiritually, you open the space where that support can finally land. This is why surrender isn't weakness. It's collaboration. You act with intention, but you leave room for the response. And in that space, the magic happens. So now, we're not just talking about trusting life, we're talking about co-creating with it, walking with it, reading its signals, respecting its timing. When you start to do this, life begins to feel different. Not easier, but more fluid. Less about control, more about connection. Less about perfection, more about participation. So here's the real question. What would your life look like if you stopped pushing against it and started dancing with it? Before science had words for energy, flow, or alignment, ancient cultures were already pointing to something deeper. They didn't have equations, but they had observation. They didn't always agree on names, but they agreed on the pattern. True power comes not from force, but from surrender. In Taoism, it was called Wu-Wei, effortless action. In Hindu philosophy, Ishvara Pranidhana, devotion to the divine through surrender. In Sufism, Fana, the dissolving of the self into unity. In Christian mysticism, it was abandonment to divine will. And in each case, surrender wasn't seen as weakness. It was a bridge to something higher, a doorway to clarity, a portal to real power. Let's take the Tao Te Ching, one of the oldest spiritual texts in existence. It says, "When nothing is done, nothing is left undone." At first glance, this seems absurd, but read it again and you'll see the paradox unfold. It's not about doing nothing, It's about aligning so deeply with the flow of life that your actions no longer create friction. You do less, and everything gets done. You stop pushing, and the path clears. This is not passive spirituality, it's mastery. The kind of mastery that comes not from control, but from cooperation with the invisible. In yogic teachings, surrender is not about giving your life away, it's about giving your ego away, letting go of the illusion that you are the sole architect of your existence. When that veil lifts, something ancient wakes up inside you, a knowing, a trust. And in that trust, you become far more capable, not less. You begin to sense when to move and when to wait, when to act and when to listen. This is the deeper wisdom behind surrender. It sharpens your perception. It connects you to timing, to intuition, to inner truth. Mystics throughout history have described this as the moment when the self becomes a vessel, not empty, but open, not powerless, but redefined. Because once the need to control dissolves, clarity flows in. It's like trying to see your reflection in a stormy lake. Only when it becomes still can you see yourself clearly. And what you see is not weakness, it's depth, it's courage, it's connection to something greater than yourself. That's what the ancients understood, that the most profound truths cannot be forced, they must be revealed, and they're revealed to those who know how to be still enough to receive them. So, here's the invitation: look beyond modern definitions of strength. Consider the wisdom that has survived empires, borders, and centuries. Ask yourself, what did they know that we've forgotten? What might you unlock, not by doing more, but by surrendering deeper? So here we are. After everything we've explored, the letting go, the personal and collective surrender, the natural intelligence of the universe, the ancient teachings, what's the deeper truth they're all pointing to? It's this: there is a flow to reality, and it responds to you, not to your control, not to your fear, but to your alignment, to your presence, to your trust. This flow isn't a fantasy. It's not mystical fluff. It's a real, responsive pattern in life, subtle but powerful. Think of the moments where everything seemed to fall into place. When the timing was perfect, the words came effortlessly. The idea appeared in the shower. The solution you were chasing finally arrived after you stopped obsessing. That's not randomness. That's the result of cooperation. You shifted into alignment and life responded. The problem is, we're trained to ignore that, to push, to hustle, to strive no matter what. And while action has its place, it's only half of the equation. The other half, the one we were never taught, is receptivity, sensing, listening, trusting. And when these two energies come together, intention and surrender, something extraordinary happens: flow. You move not in resistance to life, but with it. You're no longer fighting the current, you're carried by it. And paradoxically, this is where your greatest power begins to show. Here's the real secret: the universe doesn't respond to force, it responds to frequency. When you align with its rhythm, it meets you, not with everything you want, but with what you actually need to grow, evolve, and expand. It sends the conversation, the delay, the breakthrough, the silence, all as part of a deeper intelligence that's not trying to test you, but teach you. The question is, are you listening? Are you open? Are you present enough to notice when life is answering in ways you didn't expect? So maybe this is the invitation: to stop gripping so tightly to your plan and start partnering with a much older one. To remember that flow isn't passive, it's powerful. It's not about waiting, it's about sensing. And when you finally surrender, not out of defeat, but out of trust, you'll find something has been waiting for you all along. A current, a rhythm, a voice. And it's been whispering the whole time. So now, ask yourself, what would happen if you stopped resisting? and let the flow carry you. What could the universe finally deliver if you simply got out of the way?